Welcome to the show. I'm Andre Holmes, and tonight we're taping a special edition of the Roundtable discussion. Our topic, Beyond the Rage, Ferguson versus the Black community. We've got a whole host of experts, everyday men and women who want to say something, want to communicate something to you in this time. We know that rage and emotions are boiling over regarding the recent tragedies involving Ferguson, Missouri's Michael Brown, his tragic death, the tragic death of New York City's Eric Garner, and Cleveland, Ohio's Tamir Rice. A multiracial and cross-generational protesters are voicing their concerns, picketing, doing silent protests, doing everything they can do to say, when is enough going to be enough? Well, today we want to look particularly at how this is impacting everyday men and women, our families, the Black families specifically. We know that this is a part of a larger context because ever since we've arrived here in this country, we've been targets. We have been victims of not just police brutality, but a whole system that has been trying to undermine us and tell us that we're less than human. In our first segment, we want to hear from the voice of a young Black man. His name is Carl McCrary, and he is founder of the organization Heart to Help and a Georgia State student. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We also have some historical context. Dr. Akinyele Umoja, a professor in the African American Studies at Georgia State University, who is an expert on Black liberation movements and freedom movements. We thank you for coming to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, brother.
I don't know where we begin, but y'all the experts. So I'm going to first point to you. This has happened to young Black men. How did you feel upon hearing the news that there was a Michael Brown who was down in the street, laying there for hours, and then to have things unfold the way they have? How does this make you feel as a young Black man?
I can definitely say when I first heard the news, what ran through my mind was not again. Once again, there's a Black kid who could have been me, laying face down in the middle of the street. Someone's son, someone's brother has to bury another child. And then to, just see how it all played out, how there hasn't been any indictment for his killer, his murderer. It's sickening. And, when I heard the news, I was literally disgusted. And it really just dismisses all hope that I have in the policing system.
Now, when you say you're disgusted, how different is the feeling for a Michael Brown versus when we were back at this not too long ago with Trayvon Martin in Florida?
Well, it's the same thing. Here with this Michael Brown case, things that I've been watching, how it's playing out in the media, it's really just the same thing. It's a pattern going on. We have this child who's lost his life, of course, and, there's just the media, and some of white America, just painting, Darren Wilson out to be the victim when this mother's burying her child. They're, just painting Michael Brown as this beastly creature, this Hulk of a creature. So really the same thing with the Trayvon Martin case and the Michael Brown case. I mean, I'm just disgusted either way. But just to see that this time around there's no indictment, at least, George Zimmerman did get to argue his case in the court of law. But right now, Darren Wilson, he's a free man.
I got you. Dr. Umoja.
Yes, sir.
You've seen some things and you've researched some things. Mm-hmm. Things like this, nothing new in this country when it comes to us as Black men and as Black people. Mm-hmm. What makes this different? What are the similarities? What are the nuances in terms of when you look at the history of us?
I can't really say it's different. I remember I grew up in Southern California, Los Angeles, in Compton, California, where I went through most of my schooling, K through 12. And in 1976, I was 23 years old, and there were 52 deaths at the hands of the Los Angeles Police Department that year. That's one for every week in a year. Mm-hmm. Of course, recently, an organization I belong to, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, we put out a study in 2013 showing that in 2012, there were 313 deaths killings of blacks by police, vigilantes, and security guards inside of the United States. That was 1 for every 28 hours. I think the difference today is we're more aware because of social media. And so many of these cases now, just like we found out about Trayvon Martin through social media, right? And because of the groundswell of protests that occurred, then it forced them to have to bring George Zimmerman to trial. You know, it's only because of mass activity, which shows that there's something wrong in the system, right? The brother is certainly correct, pointing to, he's saying he's lost faith in the system of policing. There's something certain that's going on that's historic, but now we're more aware of it. I think another thing that's different now is that in Ferguson, there has been sustained resistance since August, and we're now in December, of people protesting. You know, there have been situations that have occurred that someone's killed by the police, and then after a week or two or a few days, we forget about it. But there's been sustained resistance. And I particularly say from this younger generation, oftentimes the civil rights and black power generation complains about the young generation that they're not, you know, they haven't picked up the torch. But here we clearly see a case where young people not only appropriating some of the older tactics from the old days, but even creating new tactics of civil disobedience. So I think that's—
What are some of the new tactics, so to speak?
Well, the die-ins, for instance. You're seeing die-ins occur, or what young people are calling flash mobs, where they go to protests in different ways. So they have these other creative forms of civil disobedience that, you know, we didn't see the people who were engaged in sit-ins do before in the early 1960s. And so they certainly continue in that tradition, but they've added their own flavor to it, if you will. It's almost like the difference between R&B and hip hop, if you will.
Okay.
So that's something that we should celebrate because we know that—
Hold tight. Have you participated in any of these things that he's talking about?
Yeah, actually at my university at Georgia State, we actually had this die-in that he was talking about. There was a segment on Twitter, you know, on social media, basically saying that at this certain time we're going to walk out of our classrooms, we're going to walk out of our jobs, and we're going to meet at our university courtyard. And at that time, we all walked out of, well, not we all, but a good bit of our students at Georgia State walked out of our classrooms and met in our university courtyard, and we just laid there, you know, in protest.
So what did it make you feel like experiencing that? How often will these things continue? Will you continue to participate?
Just as long as it's a problem here, I'm going to continue to participate until we, you know, reach some kind of agreement that, you know, this type of thing is not going to happen in our country. Then I'm going to be voicing
because
my
that's
opinion.
that's what the talk is now.
Right.
Everyone is making a big deal about, okay, I hear on one hand you're talking about sustained presence, sustained momentum, sustained resistance. But the big question that people have is, okay, what happens when the people leave? Right. How will these marches translate into a clear strategy, so to speak? Doctor, but you know all too well. Give us the textbook point by point, if you can. What makes something sustainable, a sustainable movement?
Oh.
What are the things that you need to have in place that make that happen?
Well, number one, and the movement already has, I say this is a movement already. But number one, you have to have resources. And when we think about resources, oftentimes people think you're talking about a lot of money. But no, we're talking about young people who have some direction about themselves, who can contribute and participate in this movement. You have to have a means to communicate. And we've already talked about the new social media today and how that's a means, even when the major television networks or the major newspapers don't want to cover anything, then young people have found a way to communicate amongst themselves. Even finding out about rallies through texting. He said he received a text saying we have to leave class at a certain time. So these are part of some of the resources that you need. You need to have access to major institutions, right? Churches and other organizations that can provide you with bail money in case people go to jail and things of that nature. But you also need to have a sustainable movement, effective disruptive tactics, something that can stop business as usual. And so if you can't stop business as usual, nobody's really going to listen. The powers that be are not going to really listen to you. So they've been able to demonstrate that. He mentioned voting, and voting is important. But oftentimes we don't look at these non-traditional ways and non-institutional means of getting change. I think the important thing is going to be for young people to coordinate their activity. If we take it back to 1960, February 1st, we had the first sit-in. And then we had sit-ins all throughout the South. Then they coordinated, and the great Ella Baker called them together at Shaw University, and they formed the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And that began action around the South and really around the United States, supported by people around the world that got us. And that's one of the reasons that we are able to vote in Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama today, right? So it's going to take coordinated effort. And I would even say with the voting that we need an agenda. So we need to have an agenda that we're voting together on. Right. And I would also add with that we need to think about, as this is going on in Mexico, remember last month, there were over 30 people killed by police there, right? So we need to look at allies around the world. In Haiti today, there are protests happening all the time with their dictatorship that's occurring there, that's supported actually by the United States. So we need to link with allies around the world and have international action. It would be great if when something is happening in Palestine, that we're protesting here and vice versa. So we need global activity to support our actions. Some folks have said we also want to expand our language. And so for instance, according to the international community, what's happening to black people could be considered genocide. The killing of members of the group. And it could even take us to the level of reparations. We always just talk about reparations for slavery. But reparations is about damages that happen to a particular group. And if we look at the volume of deaths that are happening to black people under the color of law, right? Then we can certainly say that there's been a pattern. That this is systematic. It's not something, an accident that just happens every now and then. But when we talk about in 2012, 313 deaths, one for every 28 hours, it shows a pattern that's systemic. We're not saying that every officer.
Okay, hold tight. If you're just tuning in, you are watching a community roundtable discussion where we're looking at Beyond the Rage, how Ferguson is impacting the black family. So we thank you for joining us. Right now with me, and the man who was speaking is a professor in the African American Studies Department at Georgia State University, Dr. Akinyele Umoja. And then this young man, a student at Georgia State and founder of his own nonprofit called Heart to Help. This is Carl McCray. Thank you. Again, thank you for joining me, but finish your thought.
I would just say that it's systematic. We might, and there are some cases, there might be black police officers. So we're not saying that every officer, can we say this officer is a racist or not? Right. No, we're saying that there's a pattern that exists, a system that exists that polices us in a particular way that is proven to be genocidal. It's proven to bring about deaths of members of our group in a systematic way.
Okay. Well, we are going to, I'm going to ease into the break because it's a good bookmark. We are going to have you back, young man. I'm not finished, and you're going to bring one of your colleagues here, Mr. Jordan Bradley, who's an aspiring entrepreneur and visionary himself. So stay tuned. You're watching the Community Roundtable discussion, Beyond the Rage, Ferguson versus the Black Community.
The police called after midnight when they caught our son at a drinking party. It was a real wake-up call. My wife and I are really worried. We don't know if our son has a serious problem or if he's just hanging around with the wrong crowd. How do we know what to do? The police officer who brought our son home suggested we try Al-Anon family groups. He said it might help to hear how other parents are dealing with alcohol problems. I didn't want to go to an Al-Anon meeting. I didn't want anyone to think we had problems like that. And I didn't think our son's problem was that bad. When I decided to give Al-Anon a try, I found it was a safe place that keeps your problems private. It was very helpful. Are you troubled by someone else's drinking? You might be surprised at what you could learn in an Al-Anon family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-AL-ANON or go to alanon.org.
And a woman of God, Ms. Yolanda McKinnon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And continuing to be on the panel today is Dr. Akinyele Umoja, Professor of African American Studies at Georgia State University. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, brother. All right.
We came up, it was Rodney King on the news. I know my father sat me down personally when Maxine Waters was causing a ruckus and said, you need to watch this. How have you handled these conversations in your household?
Very carefully, but it's so hard. It's a very hard conversation to have with a 9-year-old. It's a hard conversation to have with a 19-year-old, but an innocent 9-year-old where she has come and asked questions about being treated differently in school already. So it's a very hard conversation.
And what grade is she in? Is that third or fourth?
She's third grade.
Third grade.
She's third grade.
Go to a predominantly white school?
Yes.
Okay. And already kind of sensing that she's being treated differently?
Yes, her hair.
And so how do you, let's talk about it, her hair.
Her hair, it's, she's a natural, and it's a light brown color. And it doesn't look like the rest of the children, and they want to touch it and they want to feel on it. And, you know, there's a struggle there every day for her to let them know, I'm good enough with my hair this way. And that struggle isn't just with, you know, children of another race, it's within her own race. So that's a whole nother.
But you also, you are the parent, you said a 19-year-old.
Yes.
You had a young, a son first, that was
Yes.
your firstborn.
Yes.
What did you tell him about police brutality, about racism?
Be careful, and we will try to educate him on his rights. And with the both of them, the main point that we want them to get is to love yourself.
I'm gonna turn to the doctor. What are some good starting points? We know these are tough conversations. Sometimes the reason why they're not had is because they're too painful
Right. Well,
to have.
And I have to speak from personal experience of actually being a parent too. My daughter is now 31. She was a young woman when you mentioned when Rodney King occurred. Now, my wife and I, we're part of an activist household, right? We created an activist household. So what we offered to our children was that you have to be an activist, you have to be an agent for change. And so since they're born in that environment, they're raised hearing about Ida B. Wells, they're raised hearing about Harriet Tubman, Malcolm X, and people whose names aren't as popular. And they've known and they've seen activism. They've even been in rites of passage programs, which we still have today, the New African Scouts program that operates out of the Colombo Academic and Cultural Institute that my wife started, that reinforces African-centered ideas and ideas of social justice. So that provides a community and reinforcement for children. So it provides, so if you can do that through your church or organization or whatever, they don't feel as isolated because they're around like-minded children. And my children even participated in demonstrations when they were younger. I recently had a student after Trayvon, a student who's now a social worker, and she said, what do I tell the youth? And I said, tell them the cavalry is not coming.
Ain't nobody coming to save us.
Nobody's coming to save us. That we have to save ourselves, and that they have to be agents in changing that. So we have to empower our young people and teach them the history of how we've changed things in the past. Empower them that they can be agents in making that change today. And I think that's the best way we can prepare them. And it happens even from birth. She mentioned hairstyle. What's the artwork that you have in your house? What's the books that you have in your home? Do we have the book done by Sister McKinnon in our home? You know, other books that kind of reinforce a positive self-image for our children, and also an image that teaches them their history and culture. So that's our responsibility. We just can't be a parent willy-nilly. You know, we got to be a parent with intentions of raising young freedom fighters.
Since he mentioned it, let's talk about it. I know my production person back there is going to have a fit, but he's talked about it. This is Why Is the Moon Following Me? It is a story. It starts off with a question. Ms. Yolanda's daughter, Mackenzie, had a question. She wanted to know, they were driving in the car one day, and she wanted to know, why does the moon follow me, Mommy? And so this woman, who is not a English major, and she's not a what we would consider trained, you know, because sometimes we get caught up in that. But she had a story in her and has completed a book. I haven't even completed the book, and I got a degree in journalism, okay? But she put it into motion and has created this wonderful story as, you know, when we talk about solutions, you are not only talking about it, but you're walking the walk. So we want to give you credit for it. But talk a little bit about what, I mentioned kind of the question that jump-started, but what made you think that you could pull this off?
Wow, because the thought of doing it would never go away. I tried to offer the story to authors that I know had published. I'm like, hey, why don't you write this book? Here's this information, write this book. And it would never go away. And I know there are so many millions of other children that want to know, and grown-ups. Grown-ups want to know as well.
Because that's a part of it. We're going to move into a break, but I want to just say this thought. The doctor is absolutely right. What is going on in our homes that support and affirm who we are as Black people? What is the artwork that you have? What kind of television shows are your children watching?
Music.
What kind of music
Yes.
is reinforcing the things that you want to know? Because oftentimes when we see the underpinnings of what's going on with the young Black men who are on the street corner, who are wearing the sagging pants, or who, you know, Tupac, so to speak, has coined the phrase thug life. You know, that's become a very prized image in Black culture, and Black manhood, I should say, in terms of exhibiting manhood. So as we ease into the next break, I want to give you the homework assignment. What are you doing right now in your home that affirms who you are as a Black man, as a Black woman? Come back with us and join us. We have more to talk about.
This is the moment I knew his future had no boundaries.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Of parenthood that so many single mothers go through when they raise young Black boys without a lot of support from the male counterparts is the work and the effort that it takes to keep your child in line when there's so much out there for them to get into, and especially when they're in that rebellious phase and start to smell themselves, and they really do need the hand of a strong male right there. So when we'll later talk to two Black men later on as we close, but you know, you deal with Black studies, but in terms of you know, I know I don't want you to be a psychiatrist, you know, or psychologist, but we've been men, we've been young men before. Anything resonate that she's saying within
when I heard her talk about her son, I was hearing my mother talk. No, because now my mother doesn't remember all this now, and probably doesn't know everything. But you know, I didn't have a straight walk to being a professor. When I was in high school, I used drugs. I sold drugs. And as a friend of mine said, if I had zigged rather than zagged, who knows where I would be today, if I'd even be alive today. I was fortunate, and the thing that really saved me was the Black movement was so strong that it kind of pulled me in a certain direction. And then I had the right group of peers. I went from a group of peers that were knuckleheads. I hope none of them are hearing this show now. I went from a group of peers that were knuckleheads to guys who were, even though they were young, they were trying to build families. They were telling me I needed to be responsible. I needed to respect Black women. So what we need is a rebuilding of that movement again, right? That helps, that provides something cool, because when I was 17, 18, 19, being a part of the movement, Black Power movement, was cool, you know, and so, and right, whereas now thug life is cool, right? And so and that's a pull on our youth. It was a pull on us. We didn't call it thug life then, but it was a pull to the street. And that's something that's been a part of our culture for generations, right? And so we're gonna have to rebuild community, rebuild, and that's still a risk. It's still a risk. Anytime we have children, anytime we even are married or have relationships, you're taking a risk. But you gotta put your best foot forward, and as Sister Yolanda said, you gotta pray.
Okay.
And you know, and sometimes it work out, but it's always gonna be a struggle. It's never like just easy, right? But that's what life is about, you know, and we learn through those struggles. Those struggles actually make us stronger. And so that's why we have to have the assault for the hearts and minds of our children and our people.
Okay.
That we have to be actively engaged in trying to fight, because as I mentioned, this is a struggle. We don't have complete control of our environment or our children, so we have to reinforce our positive images, our images to reinforce the best of our traditions, our history and culture, to try to save as many of our people as possible and create institutions. And it has to go beyond us talking about it. We have to put money toward it. We have to put our labor toward it, our time, to try to build these institutions to save our youth and to save ourselves as a people.
Well, that's a good way to end this last segment. You heard the man talk about how we've got to support and build the infrastructure, I hear you saying. We'll have everybody's contact information on the website and in the credits at the end of the show. When we come back, we'll be talking to two young brothers who are doing their thing, and we'll hear from them about how what they've heard is resonating with them. You don't want to miss this important conversation.
Food. It nourishes, brings us together, and adds flavor to life. That's why it's important to wash hands, surfaces, and fresh produce. Keep raw meat, poultry, and seafood separate from ready-to-eat foods like fruits and vegetables. And cook to proper temperatures using a food thermometer. Enjoy! And refrigerate leftovers within 2 hours. For more tips on safely preparing foods, visit homefoodsafety.org.
So now when you guys have been listening in on the conversation we've been having, what has kind of resonated in you when you were hearing some of the things that were being discussed earlier?
It took me back to that first time I heard about the Ferguson situation. It just kind of sparked some of the lyrics from a song, actually, Be Free, by one of my favorite artists, J. Cole. He just really was one of the only hip-hop artists that I saw really dive into this situation, as I remember him over the summer actually going to Ferguson and talking to people, and not for media purpose, just for personal gain, personal knowledge. He really immersed himself into what was going on, and the song really spoke. It was a different spirit from him. He came from a passionate place.
So what is the song? What are the lyrics that resonate for you? That
almost every word. He doesn't sound like himself. He's almost crying. He's almost like he's pouring out emotion for just not being satisfied with the situation. He speaks about us just being free and wanting us to just be, more than what we are allowing ourselves to be, more than what the judicial system is allowing us to be, and just kind of, he's almost wanting us to be in a utopia, just away from these stigmas and away from the stereotypes that have plagued us over the years and kind of put us into this situation where we're being, used, I guess, having prejudice against us in situations where Mike Brown was shot and left in the middle of the street.
Let's back it up. Carl, do you feel free? Do you feel safe?
Free, to a sense. Safe, I mean, I know that all police aren't bad police. And I mean, most of them I would hope has good intentions. But to say that, do I feel safe? No, honestly, because I mean, I've been victim of police's, telling me that, I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing, and it's just the stigmatization that, we've been enduring for years and years. It's just like, when are we gonna get over it? I'm driving up the road listening to my music, and sometimes it's louder than, what others want to hear. And to be driving up the road and be pulled over for no apparent reason.
Has that happened to
That's
you?
happened to me. It's happened to me. And
How did you deal with it when it was happening?
how did I deal with it? I mean, honestly, it's just like, what do you do? You've been seeing all this in the media. You've been seeing people get shot by police officers. So what do you do? The only thing that I know to do is just to be quiet, and just to comply with the officers as much as possible.
Now, do you feel when you have to do that, do you feel in some ways that your manhood is in some way being undermined? Either one of you can jump in on that one.
I would have to say yes. I recall one moment when I was actually pulled over. Granted, I was speeding. The force was a little excessive. I was detained and put in the back of his truck without any question. As soon as he came to the door, he asked me to step out of the car, put me in handcuffs. And
let's take it a step further. What exactly were you doing? What was the justification for why they pulled you over?
There was none. Initially, there was none. And he just told me the speed limit that I was going. He really didn't justify. He said the speed limit was excessive. He did harp on the fact that he had to speed a little further than that to catch up with me. However, it was 7 a.m. in the morning. I literally just crossed the border for Missouri, so I was leaving Missouri. And this was 2 years ago, so before the Ferguson incident has happened. I just still felt the prejudice from that area. Mm-hmm. And like I said, he put me in the back of the car. He didn't say anything until maybe 20 minutes later. He spoke with one of the passengers in my car, came back and expressed some of the things that she said. She was discontented. She didn't understand why I was in the car with handcuffs without any explanation. So after about 20 minutes, he allowed me to explain myself. I told him I was headed back to work. And the job, I feel like maybe is safe. Saved me from going to jail, but I didn't feel too happy. I didn't feel my manhood was being respected just for the fact that I was above 21 years old. I felt that I had no right to be put in the back of the car without being explained to why. Mm-hmm. And I felt that had it been someone else of a different race, there would have been a lot more of a different outcome.
Right.
Now, what were the messages that your parents taught you about how you would navigate in the world as a black man?
One of the things that my mom drilled in my head early was to just respect yourself and respect your neighbors and respect your elders. Mm-hmm. So that is just one of the things that I know has saved me from a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm. What about you?
The exact same. I don't recall too many times where my parents instilled, this is how you should act because you're black. Right. It was more so, this is how you should act because this is how you should act.
Exactly.
So I wasn't raised in a home where race was looked at as the one thing that would hold me back. It was always my attitude and my actions.
So even if race wasn't talked about in a way that it would hold you back, I think that, and if any of this has resonated with you, I want you to jump in. I am not that old. I came of age in the 90s, early 90s. I grew up on a different world and the Cosby Show and all of that, and when multiculturalism was coming into being on the academic set. Mm-hmm. But my father, who didn't go to college, he talked very clearly about how I would be kind of in a fishbowl as a black man. Mm. That I didn't just represent myself, that when white people viewed me, they viewed the entire group of people based on their interaction with me, and how I would have to be twice as good and receive half the credit. So I won't say that to your point, I won't say that my race wasn't brought up as a way that's going to hold me back, but I definitely got a message that my life was going to be a little bit more challenging because of it.
Yeah.
Now, that didn't mean it would hinder me from doing what I wanted to do, but he made me aware of just that kind of fishbowl mentality. Do you all feel like you're in a fishbowl? Did you feel that way at all, or was that just how I felt?
Fishbowl is a very good description. It's funny because they didn't say it in a way where I'll be held back, but they did allude to a lot of the same things that your father alluded to. It said you would be representing more than just yourself. So that's where the respect elders and respect others came into play. So I took that and I listened and I learned from just experiencing things. I loved a different world. That's why I laughed. But I started to see from those sitcoms a lot of the things that I didn't see in my environment. I was in an all-black environment. So interactions with different races weren't there. It was more of the classism that we faced. But once I started to go into the world and started to grow up a little bit and educate myself, I did see that that mentality of me being in a fishbowl. Every time I interacted with someone who wasn't black, I could feel the judgment. And I was just trying to be myself. But I could see them kind of relate certain things that they've seen from other blacks to me. And I was I don't know these people you're talking about. I'm Jordan.
Well, hold tight, hold tight. We're going to continue our black men just getting together and rapping. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't see this very often where we lay out the experiences that we go through. Again, you're watching an important community discussion, Beyond the Rage, Ferguson versus the black community. Stick around and enjoy the conversation.
Cool party.
What do you guys want to drink?
Can I have a head-on collision with a concussion twist?
Make mine a fatal accident with no survivors.
And you?
A designated driver, please. You know, just a bottle of water.
Awesome.
You're a lifesaver.
Male cousins at one point, 10 of them were in prison. My dad was in prison at the same time as all those. So really just to show the kids back in my hometown that there is another way out, that it's okay to be smart and it's okay to, you know, to be a leader. That really motivated me to go to college and pursue my dreams.
Okay. And so what is your major while you're in?
My major is managerial science. I'm seeking a Bachelor of Business Administration.
Okay.
With a concentration.
And you're already putting that to good use because you've created this Heart to Help Foundation.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that. You mentioned it at the beginning of the show, but now I want to revisit that for viewers that are just tuning in.
All right. So Heart to Help is it's a community service project. It really derived from me really just embarking on this little journey, going out into the community and speaking with a lot of homeless people. In Atlanta and at our university, we have numerous encounters with homeless people. And I've just been lately sitting down with a lot of the homeless people and just seeing that there was one thing constant among them. A lot of them just wanted someone to listen to. And I feel like not only the homeless community, but the elderly, the youth, and minorities, of course, a lot of them just need that platform, need someone to listen to, you know, and to show them that, you know, there's a community that's behind you. And so with a Heart to Help, in the word heart, there will be an emphasis placed on the word here. So our organization will be focused on encouraging others to be effective listeners by giving back to our communities. And of course, our primary focus, like I said, would be minorities, the homeless.
So how does it, like, what will be the core activity that you're doing? Is it kind of like you're breaking bread with people and having dinner? Where are you doing the listening? Where does that exchange take place? Are you doing a service project where you're going and giving homeless people blankets or feeding them? How are you engaging with the population?
One of the things I plan to do is to partner with a lot of different organizations whose missions already kind of closely line up with ours. And so I plan on putting together partnerships with like the Atlanta Mission and different organizations like that, and of course schools in our area. And of course I plan on having in the future a big day of service in our community and just get a whole lot of different people together in our community, and not just members of our organization, but organizations in our community that, again, mission lines up with ours.
Got you. And so you're what they call a social entrepreneur, if I could use that word. But now you are a straight up businessman, a business major.
Yes.
What is it that you're hopeful that this degree from Georgia State will lead you to?
This degree actually speaks a lot of volume. It's been giving me a lot of just drive through Georgia State and seeing the different people that have come from the school. It's very diverse. But I do more so get inspired by the students that relate to me, my race, and they're doing the great things. And I just want to be a part of that legacy. I want to be someone that's an alumni of the school that you can say he did something great for his community. He did something that he's giving back constantly, but he's also able to provide himself a salary, I will agree, I'm partial social entrepreneur. You describe me as a visionary. I would just say this degree is going to allow me to take these things that I've seen and experience and translate them into things that inspire the youth. That's kind of a mission that I've held throughout all of my community service endeavors, just from doing Panther Breakaway trips to the community service I do weekly.
I got you.
They've all been related to the youth because I get more inspiration from them than they get from me.
And it's important. I'll never forget when, in my college years, I used to do a lot of tutoring in the elementary school. And it was at that moment that I realized the presence that a black man has in the school. It was so gratifying and rewarding to the little kids. They would want me to go to recess with them and play football or do something. Like they were so shocked that another man was in the building, and then they wanted to kind of linger around you. They kind of wanted to be with you. So even if I was not tutoring a particular student that was right in my class, the other kids would know from other classes would come, and they would have that difference. I think that's one thing. It makes me it frustrates me when I hear your hopes, dreams, and aspirations. We have to remember that these men that have transitioned and have gone on because of tragedies, they also had ambitions. They also had things and lives that were important to them. And one of the most striking things that I hate about the way the tone of the conversation sometimes when these tragedies happen is people will often mention the black on black violence that the community also has, as if it justifies the police doing what they're doing. We're going to take a quote from Mayor Rudy Giuliani, former mayor of New York, where he was being interviewed on Meet the Press recently, and I'm directing the quote as it is. He says, "I find it very disappointing that you're not discussing the fact that 93% of blacks in America are killed by other blacks. We're talking about an exception here, meaning when the police go wrong and go rogue." But then he also says, he wraps up his comment with, "White police officers won't be there if you weren't killing each other 70% of the time." How do you all feel about that statement? I'll start with you, Carl.
I would say, and I'm sure Jordan could agree, in a sense, he has a kind of valid point. I mean, one of the things that we do need to do is start within ourselves. We can't deny the fact that black on black crime is a problem. It's something that must be fixed. And I think that with comments like this, I feel like they're almost trying to deter us from the bigger problem. I mean, they're trying to make it seem like killing our youth isn't a problem. They're trying to cover it up by saying, wait, this isn't the real problem. The real problem is you guys killing each other. So it disgusts me to see that, they're trying to make it seem like it's okay. Y'all are people who you have been sworn into your positions to protect us, not to kill us. And the fact that, they're trying to justify it by saying that, black on black crime is the bigger problem, it's disgusting.
Yeah. It's almost preposterous for him to say that, being a former mayor of New York. And basically what Carl said is true. We do need to look at ourselves, but that's not something for an outsider to say. To misdirect the attention to ourselves is kind of throwing me off because, one, it's easier for us to see ourselves and we see our flaws. When you look in the mirror, you see your flaws. But when someone else is telling you about yourself, you always want to say, well, what are you doing for yourself? If you're a former mayor, former leader of an entire city, one of the biggest cities, actually, in size, in terms of population, what are you saying to the people by saying that it's our fault without taking responsibility for the actions of people that you used to be a mayor for?
You know, what's interesting about this comment, too, though, is when he talks about black people are killing each other, there is no mention of the underpinnings of why that goes on. There's no mention of a school system that does not properly educate black people about themselves. There's no mention of the triple and double unemployment for black men that is all around the nation. There's no mention of the unfair sentencing that goes on once black men are in the criminal justice system. I remember when Kathy Cox was running for, I believe it was Secretary of State. It was some political office. It may have been even governor. I'm not quite familiar with this, but this was back in 2005, 2006. I learned that communities predict and forecast the numbers of jails and prisons that they need on 3rd and 4th grade reading tests. Did you know that? I'm going to repeat that again. There are local governments that predict and plan and forecast the numbers of jails they will need in the future based on the reading scores of 3rd and 4th grade students.
Pipeline.
That is blown away. If that doesn't encourage you to read to your child, if that doesn't motivate you, but here's the thing, most people don't know that. And so when you can make a comment that, well, the police are just here to keep order, yes, that's true, but the other side of it that's not said is that when 16-year-old Johnny, who was white, is huffing and doing or having a rave with his friends or some house party that's gone, wrong, there's a different treatment and a different response to him versus when Pookie is on the corner and he is showing out in the cultural way that is. So there has to be some acknowledgement of the cultural nuances that also are at work behind things.
And the only thing that I can speak on in that is through experiencing it myself, seeing it in my neighborhood. It's just funny, the pipeline is a very serious issue that a lot of people don't know, and I thank you for educating those that don't. But the Pookies that we can speak on, those that I know that have sold things, their intentions weren't to break the law. Well, I mean, so to speak. Their intentions were to make money for their family, the families that aren't getting jobs because of their race. Now, those that are throwing house parties that, counterpart to our race, their intentions were to break the law, to have fun. There were no other intentions for having a party with, illegal drugs and substances that, are forbidden. But never to justify, breaking the law, but we can see where the issues are. They're not always in our actions, but our intentions may have been to provide for our family because we aren't getting these jobs that are afforded to those that have different privilege. From a system that's been in place since just the times you spoke of earlier, slavery. These things have already been in place. We're in a system where we can't initially make changes to the whole system. I feel like the police are just pawns. So yeah, they are here to protect and serve, but they're coming from authority figures that are telling them, okay, these are the people that are going to jail. After 3rd and 4th grade, we know this. So let's not even worry about their outcomes. Let's not even really, put too much effort and time into making sure that they get the justice they deserve. That's kind of the message that I'm getting. It's like, okay, we already forecast they're going to jail, so we're not going to give them that much effort. That's crazy.
Now, how, in terms of switching gears just a little bit, and you're looking at the motivation for why black men end up in the criminal justice system.
I can't speak on it from experiencing it myself as far as doing these actions, but from having people and associates and neighbors and classmates and seeing it from the secondhand accounts That's what I'm speaking on. I know these people personally. They don't have
but my
malicious
question
intent
is,
in their heart.
my question though to both of you is, you could have easily gone down the road, or maybe not. Maybe that's presumptuous on my part. But what is it about what you have done that's different than when you talk about the numbers of men in your family who got caught up, right, and that you're kind of like, you made it through and people are cheering for you and they're happy for you? What made your decisions different than your friends and your counterparts?
I will honestly say every individual is different. I react to, my father not being in our home differently than my cousins may have reacted to our fathers not being in our home. But one thing that I can say was constant is that our fathers weren't there. So what we need is, we need positive role models. We need positive men, going back and, giving back to our community. Just today I participated in this program called Real Men Read. We need people, going out into the community reading to our students, and it's just one of the things for me. I know that for me, I always wanted better. I always wanted to make my mom proud. I didn't want to be that person that was, acting up in class all the time. So I acted up a lot in class. I talked a lot in class, but just to sum it all up, people are different. We're going to react to it in different ways.
And what about you?
And
what would you attribute to?
I think it goes back to the way I was raised. I was fortunate enough to have a father, but I can't accredit me being here to him because Carl's here just as well. Right. I know friends of mine that are very successful that didn't have a father in their life. It's the more so wanting to do better, seeing better, and just doing what you need to do to get there. Role models do help, and I feel as if in our community, we've glorified those that, not to say aren't good role models, but don't have the same intentions as a President Barack Obama. Right. Those that are in these political positions to make changes. They're not getting the glory that I feel that they deserve. We only seem to have one role model right now.
And who are you saying is
I would say President Barack Obama would be the one person that I hear more than anyone else as far as the black role model. When we have teachers, we have principals, we have business leaders in the community that are giving back, but don't get the same respect because they maybe don't make the same figures as athletes and people in the media and such as that. And that's kind of one of the issues that the media has cultivated us to follow. But personally, that's not something that I played into. So I would say that may have been what made me different in those that I see successful around me. But at the end of the day, it's really your outlook. I came to Atlanta in 1998. I didn't know what black was, honestly. I can recall.
Did you come here to go to high school, or?
I was from 6 years old, so I was going to second grade.
Okay.
Came from Virginia Beach. It's a pretty mixed community, but I didn't look at my white friends as white friends and my black friends as black friends. I looked at them as friends. When I came here, I was with my mother. We came here to meet my father so we can live together. And that's when I went to a predominantly black school. And I started to see things differently, and I was asking questions like, what makes me different? Why does everyone look, black? And I started to see behavioral changes, but never did I understand race to be a problem or an issue that I should look at as something that, it's gonna change the way you look at the world. Mm-hmm. I always saw it as, okay, he has this, I can have this. Mm-hmm. I don't want to put anything in front of me to give power to something that is an obstacle that most people say is a problem. Yes, I know there are a lot of stigmas, a lot of obstacles in this road.
So let me say this, as we're nearing the close on this segment, what would be the one thing you'd want people to know about what how you're trying to represent for black men? I'll start with you, Carl.
I would say that, we aren't all these beastly, none of us are these beastly, hulk of a creatures that, society has painted us out to be. A lot of us have intentions of wanting to be leaders. We want to lead by example. So I feel that at the end of the day, like I said, we're not these beastly creatures, man. I just wish that our society would stop, picturing us and painting us to be these kind of people that we know we aren't. We all have goals. We have goals just like our Caucasian and our Hispanic counterparts. What makes me different? Why can't I, be given the same opportunity to reach these goals like my Caucasian counterparts?
And what about you?
Just to really wrap up the point I was making, that what I've experienced through my lifetime has kind of shaped my goals for now. And one of the entrepreneurial pursuits that I have is to kind of make a movement and a statement to chase. And when I was thinking about the word chase, I love dreams. I love being a person that can visualize things and go for them, make them happen. I feel as if we inspire our youth to chase their goals and have dreams other than what they see as far as just being a rapper or being a ball player. Those are the two goals that most people want to be because that's what they see the most. But if we inspire them to chase, and as the acronym states, change history and seek education about who they are, how to love each other, how to really communicate effectively and not just through 140 characters. Now our kids are focused on their phones. We don't know how to interact. We don't know how to network. We don't know how to do a lot of things that can, fuel these goals.
Gotcha.
That's really what it is.
What does this acronym again stand for, Chase?
CHASE is an acronym, and it stands for Change History and Seek Education. So it's more of a movement phase right now, but I would love to see it develop into an organization to just inspire and empower those around us. We know what we need, and that's education. We know where it's going to come from, and that's those that have it, the older and the elders. But it's directed towards the youth.
And that's what we need.
Exactly.
So I thank you. I have no doubt that you will be successful in what you do.
Thank you.
And you will also be successful at what you do. So y'all will be ones to watch, and you always have a place to come back and share what you're doing.
Awesome. This is great.
We're going to go to break, and when we return, we're going to be wrapping up the show.
This is the moment I knew. His future had no boundaries.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Thank you for joining us again. I appreciate everybody who has taken the time to come out. I thank the brothers, my guests, for joining me on this very informative topic. I learn something every day when I do this show, when I host the program, when I talk with everyday men and women who are making a difference in the community. This topic, Beyond the Rage, Ferguson versus the black community, has been something that I hope that has inspired something in you to get up and take action. I used to work with a man who used to tell us all the time, the cavalry is not coming. It's going to be us that save us. And I just want to leave on this note. When white women started to die from breast cancer, they created the Komen Foundation. And now they have NFL players and everybody wearing pink during a special month. When the white gay community got HIV and AIDS, they took to the streets and started to make legislation happen, and a whole movement was generated and did what it needed to do to help save them. My challenge and task for us as black men is that we've now got to sound our own alarm. This is happening to us, and we're the only ones that are going to fix the problem. So I hope that you pass this show on to another black male. I hope that you pass a book that can help them, that you encourage them, that when you hear negativity around black men, that you challenge it and check it right away. So I want you to keep the faith and remember that everyday people can do extraordinary things. One voice, one mic. Thank you for joining this conversation. I'm Andre Holmes, and have a good evening.